Hello, my name is Jacob Foy. I am an RBT in a pediatric autism center. I've been working as an RBT for about 3 years, and I plan on getting my master's in applied behavioral analysis to become a BCBA in the school system. In this video, I will be discussing the differences between a functional behavioral analysis and a functional analysis. To start off, I will be discussing my experience with behavioral assessments. So I have a little bit of personal experience with functional analysis at a clinic I was working at a few years ago. I was working with my BCBA at a clinic a few years ago, assisting her with a functional analysis with a client that has severe aggression behaviors. We ran the functional assessment and put the client in different environments that presented different potential triggers for the severe aggression behavior. One of the things that we did for this functional assessment for this client was we set them up in this environment that might evoke the severe aggression behavior, and we observed the client from a distance to prevent our presence interfering with the natural flow of this behavior. I personally do not have a lot of experience with functional behavior analysis, but at my current clinic, one thing that we do on a regular basis is take ABC data on behaviors that we see across the month that we work with the client. At the end of the month, the BCBA typically looks at the ABC data collected across therapists that work with the client to see if there's a common occurrence with a particular behavior and see if it needs to be added to the client's plan of care. Before we begin, it is important to understand what constitutes a problem behavior. Typically, a problem behavior is a socially significant behavior that would cause harm to the individual, harm to others, or prevent the individual from becoming independent. We'll now be discussing the difference between a functional behavioral analysis and a functional analysis. In a functional behavioral analysis, it examines antecedents and the consequences of the problem behavior. It takes into consideration the three-turn contingency, which is antecedent, behavior, and consequences in this assessment. ABC charts are very useful when in a functional behavioral analysis since it considers the three-term contingencies. And it utilizes direct, indirect, and functional analysis of a behavior. I'll be discussing the differences between direct, indirect, functional analysis, and product measure later in the video. In a functional analysis, the functional analysis is typically used for severe problem behaviors, and it looks at the direct causes for the behaviors. The goal of functional analysis is to ID and individualize treatment for problem behaviors. It may involve multiple contingencies influence severe problem behavior, or the SPB. And the personal example that I have for functional analysis is what I was talking about earlier in the video about using or putting our client that I had at the time in different environments to see what would evoke the problem behavior and taking data my BCBA found on that. An example of a functional behavior assessment would be the behavioral analyst directly observing the client in a classroom setting. The behavioral analyst would observe what happens right before a behavior occurs, recording what the behavior looks like, and the consequence of the behavior, and then takes that data into consideration when finding alternative, healthier behaviors for the client. Now I'll be discussing 7 reasons why functional analysis would be favored as a pre-treatment assessment. According to James Lewis-Alley, there are 3 different categories for why a functional analysis would be favored. Those 3 categories would be practical reasons, humanistic reasons, and scientific reasons. The first 3 reasons are under the practical reasons, with number 1 being hundreds of studies being shown that FAs provide effective, precise, and individualized interventions for the clients. The second reason would be functional analyses provide stable and sensitive baselines for severe problem behaviors. Number 3 being functional analyses allow interventions of severe problem behaviors to be known why a severe problem behavior changes and when it is likely to change. And humanistic reasons. Number 4 would be functional analyses are dignifying, and they are essentially involve asking the person in the severe problem behavior why he or she is doing it. And this is allowing the person to have his or her wants or needs met. Number 5 being functional analyses foster humility by requiring the interventionalists to understand more about the person's relevant history. Number 6 and 7 being under scientific reasons. Number 6 is functional analyses, essential characteristics of a science in general. They have objectivity, their attentiveness, and paramocy. And behavioral analysts in particular are inherent to functional analysis. And number 7 being the essential goals of science are recognized in functional assessments. In an article titled Functional Analysis of Problem Behavior, a review by Henley, Iwata, and McCord. In their article, it states that studies included in the present review were those in which pre-treatment assessments were based on direct observation and measurement of a problem behavior was conducted under at least 2 conditions involving manipulation of an environmental variable in an attempt to demonstrate the relation between an environmental event and behavior. I'll now be going into detail on direct, indirect, and product measure of behavior. Direct measurement is when the therapist directly observes the client to take data. This is typically the gold standard for data collection because the therapist is directly involved in collecting data with very minimal room for error. An example of direct measurement would be the therapist going into the classroom with the teacher to take data on a problem behavior that a particular student might have. Indirect measurement for behavior is not the gold standard, but is typically used whenever there are limitations for data collection. Such examples for indirect measurement would be the teacher taking data on the behavior and then reporting it to the therapist. Another example could be a parent recording the data to the therapist. The problem with indirect measurement is that there's more room for error. The people that are involved with taking data for the client need to be trained on the definition of the problem behavior so that they will accurately take data for the therapist. Product measurement is measuring the behavior and its effects on the environment. An example of product measure would be measuring the amount of trash on the ground before and after adding extra trash cans in a park. One thing to take into consideration are the ethical concerns with a functional analysis. Some people might be concerned that setting up the client to evoke a severe problem behavior would be unethical. However, there are ethical ways that you can conduct a functional analysis to ensure the safety of the client and the people around them. Now, is there one type of assessment that would be overall better than the other? I would say no. Each assessment has its strengths and weaknesses. One may be good in a particular situation over the other, while vice versa for the second one. Functional behavior assessments utilize the three-term contingency for a data collection, while as the functional analysis observes the direct cause for a problem behavior. Functional analyses are typically used for severe problem behaviors to find the direct cause in order to find alternative behaviors for a particular client. Closing comments. In this video, we discussed the differences between a functional behavior assessment and a functional analysis. We also discussed the differences between direct measurements, indirect measurements, and proximate measures of behavior. If you have any questions about what assessment would be best suited for your client, I would advise consulting with your head BCBA on further steps to take to decide what would be most appropriate for your client. The questions that I have for my classmates would be, what are some of the new things that you've learned about FBAs and FAs in this class compared to your own personal experience?